So before I start with this speech, I just kind of want to point out the headgear that I'm wearing, kind of to get into character and to pay honor and basically describe some of the headgear that the migrant farm workers used to wear out in the fields. The same migrant farm worker who Cesar Chavez used to champion for as a civil rights activist during the 1960s. His main thing was fighting for the rights of the migrant farm workers out in the grape fields and out in the different crops and fields out there in north central California, primarily in the Delano area. Cesar Chavez was born in Yuma, Arizona on March 31st, 1927. At an early age, he learned about injustice when his father lost his home. And basically, he was swindled because he couldn't afford to pay the interest rates on his home. He was swindled. He couldn't buy back his land. So therefore, the family was forced to move to California in 1938, moving back and forth from California to Arizona, but eventually they resided in California in 1938 in the Delano area in a barrio called Sal Si Puedes, or Get Out If You Can, which was a rough neighborhood, and that's where they grew up at. Speaking only primarily Spanish, having a hard time in school. He just didn't like school altogether, Cesar Chavez. But later on in life, he came to enjoy education because he knew it was the key to get his word out to the masses about the different types of hardships that the migrant farm worker was facing in California. He started his own family. He ended up working in the fields. As a young man, he dropped out in the 8th grade, joined the Navy, and then he eventually finished the Navy in 2 years, and then started his own family in California. That's where he met up with Father McDonald and Fred Ross, and became active for the migrant worker, or for their cause to kind of have the better rights for the migrant farm worker out there in California, which eventually was a stepping stone to establishing the National Farm Workers Association with Dolores Huerta. Basically, their main goal was to fight for migrant farm workers' rights. Simple rights that you would take for granted that they didn't receive, like restrooms, or using the restroom, or having a water and clean water to drink, and to be able to use the restroom out in the fields. Wages, breaks, days off, food, basic necessities that they weren't afforded, and they were basically treated like slaves because a simple fact, probably a lot of the migrant farm workers were undocumented immigrants, and they were taken advantage of because of that reason. So Cesar Chavez was a big advocate when he started the strikes and boycott of nonviolent action based on inspirations from Gandhi, St. Francis of Assisi. He would go on hunger strikes to persevere for the cause for the migrant farm workers out there in California. And basically his hunger strikes or his fasting gained national attention because of what he was doing and for that specific cause. The main one being the Delano grape strike, which they boycotted consumer grapes or table grapes, and eventually they came to terms with the farmers that owned the crops out there for union dues and basically basic necessity rights. But he kept fighting on for their rights throughout the years, and then eventually in 1993 he fought his last fight. He passed away April 23rd, 1993 to be exact. He passed away, and he was honored by at least 50,000 mourners out there in the Yuma, Arizona area. A lot of the same mourners were the same people that walked with him throughout the strikes, throughout his years as an activist for the civil rights movement for the farm workers. 1994, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, or the Medal of Freedom, for the stuff that he did out there for civil rights through President Clinton. And to this day, you can see plenty of different street signs, museums, infrastructure facilities that pay homage to the great man that Cesar Chavez was all over California and in different parts of the West Coast, just to pay honors for a man who was a champion for not only migrant farm workers' rights, but civil rights as a whole. And that concludes my speech. I thank you for your time, and go Cesar Chavez.